Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webcast. Company Culture Management. What should you consider when choosing a vendor? Sponsored by Recognize. This webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI and SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. If you have any questions during the webcast, click on the Q&A tab in your webinar controls and type them there. A new tab will open in your browser with the webcast survey. Please be sure to complete it as soon as the webcast is ended. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Recognize for their presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name's Alex Grandy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Recognize. We're employee recognition reward software. We've been around for 11 years. And in that time, we've been able to learn a lot about companies and how some companies operate and some others may not operate as well, and seeing the difference. And so we wanted to give a perspective that could help companies stay organized, for the long haul for many years, that can transcend people, right? Because as we'll talk more about, people leave and projects continue. So we're going to go through how to stay organized a little bit, thinking about how to plan ahead, and then some things in the actual recognition rewards program that you probably know to consider. And we'll talk a little bit about those things, those known unknowns. And then we'll talk about things you may not have considered, those unknown unknowns, right? So let's go ahead and get started on that. So essentially, like I said, people come and go, but projects don't. And so it's been very interesting to work with a company, and then they decide, well, we're gonna postpone, and then 2 years later, somebody else from the company reaches out, and they have no idea that anyone has ever reached out to us, right? And so if you talk to a vendor like Recognize or anyone, you should be assured that they will know about your organization. So if a situation arises where you come back, don't you want to know what they know, right? The vendor may know more about you than you know about yourself. And we feel that's a problem. So, one of the things that we found to stay organized is to keep track of your vendors in whatever is your wiki. It could be Excel, spreadsheet. Here at Recognize, we use a tool called Notion to stay organized. There's also, software solutions for procurement, software solutions for organizing vendors. These can be great because they can help your CFO see things that maybe you don't need to be purchasing for anymore. Maybe it can be combined with another program. But you can simply do it in Excel or something like Notion. And I'm just going to just share our Notion. Notion's a newer tool, so you may not be familiar, but it's a lot like Google Docs or OneDrive or just even like Excel. And it allows us to manage our software. So I made this mock vendor management system with it, where you can have your different programs that you're evaluating. And so again, if someone, an HR coordinator who's been evaluating different vendors and then they leave the organization, that knowledge isn't lost. So if I was to click on recognition rewards, for instance, you can have the name of the different vendors that you've spoken to, who you spoke to, what was the price, right? This is all mock data essentially, but essentially, you can keep track of who you spoke to. And what's amazing about Notion is you can have different views of that data that can show additional information about the different vendors. You can also have a Kanban based off of that table of data. You can do some more things with other tools, but we love Notion because it helps us keep track of all of our vendors, and you can do that with all the different types of programs you do. And so if anytime someone's going to go have a demo with a company, you can go and check your wiki, your database, and make sure that maybe you haven't spoken to them before, maybe you have, and then you'll be able to have the notes and understanding of what has happened in the years past, so that these programs again can transcend time, right? So planning ahead, moving on from keeping organizing, planning ahead, where do you want to go with your program? Always thinking big picture. Where you start isn't where you're going to end up 3 years later. A recognition rewards program, it's a lot like promoting your own internal application, being an entrepreneur, someone evangelizing programs inside of your organization, right? And so, what are some things you can do around that? For instance, you don't necessarily need to start with points in a rewards program. You don't need to start with rewards. Focus on what came up in that employee happiness survey. People come to us all the time and they say, we did an employee happiness survey or employee engagement survey, and we found people are telling us they don't feel appreciated by their manager. Did they mention gift cards and Amazon and points? No, they mentioned that they need recognition. Let's solve that problem first. Let's get you to that next survey that you do in 6 months to show, or maybe you do a net promoter score, and in that quarterly net promoter score, you want to see an improvement in that on that core. And then, of course, maybe later adding points and rewards. So it's really all about product marketing with a recognition program or wellness program or whatever you're going after, right? And so people ask me, how do I launch this to be successful? Well, we have obviously ideas around that. Include it in your newsletter, have a town hall, have a video being created by the CEO showing that person sending a recognition, right? These are great things to do in the launch of your program, but it's the ongoing support of that program, that continuous reinforcement by the managers, including it in the town hall, having it part of that performance review. That's how you're going to keep it going, and having that plan for the long term, right? So, it's always good to ask your partners, people like Recognize or whoever you work with, are you aligned in your long-term vision? Are these things, is the roadmap that they provide in line with what you're looking for, And that's a great thing about subscription services, SaaS, like Recognize or whomever you work with, that's a SaaS provider, is that it should be continuously getting better. Your subscription is going towards improvement in the program, and you should know that those improvements are in line with what you're looking for. What kind of advice are they providing? Does it feel like they're trying to just make more money, like recommending more rewards, or they actually have, your interest in mind, So that's something important to consider. So some things that you probably know to consider, and we'll talk a little bit about these things, right? So points and budgeting. Of course, at some point, it's great to incorporate rewards and points in a recognition and rewards platform, right? It makes it more interesting. People love being able to redeem things with the points they earn from all the great work they've done. Things like swag or experiences or Amazon. So one thing you can do with a vendor is before you purchase to say, hey, can we do a walkthrough of what it would be like to set up a budget with your program? Like as if I'd already purchased, how would I set up a budget with your program? Right? And learning about that as if you already are working together. I think we all know when you interview somebody, if it feels like you're already working together, it's probably a good fit. That's what the same thing with vendors. Does it feel like they really, have your interests in mind? So, for instance, with Recognize, we figured out how to set up so that, job title can be permission to allow only people with the job title of account director, for instance, being able to give out points. Or allowing everybody to give out a certain number of points, and that equates to a certain amount of dollars. But do those points expire? Do you have to spend that amount of money? Or is this just the maximum potential spend, right? And only actually at redemption that you'll spend any money. So kind of the devils in the details of the recognition program, because at the end of the day, as we often hear, well, it's not, Recognize or, all the different vendors out there, they're all kind of the same at the end of the day. Well, that's true on a surface level. We're sending recognition, you get rewards, right? But the devil's in the details. So how do you actually allocate points to different job titles or roles or locations? And am I actually spending that money even if they don't use it? So these are the kind of the questions you want to be asking. Inclusivity. I asked my team, what are some things I should include in this? So one thing that I didn't first initially think of is inclusivity. You want to create an environment that can allow anyone in your organization to feel like they're part of the program. We often see a divide between, the back office and the front line, right? People in the factory or people on the ground floor, people out in the field versus people in the back office. There can be a bit of a divide there, and you can bridge that gap by having a program that everybody can access, right? Also in your native language, can it support your native language that person is in, or that region in the world? Right. That's a great thing about technology now, that recognition is on an app, it's on the computer. So anywhere in the world you can access it. But is it set up to, for instance, languages like Arabic that read right to left? Does the application flip if you support those regions? If you're specifically in the US, then you have a lot easier time to get started. However, still you want to survey your staff, a cross-functional group of people with different walks of life and backgrounds and positions to make sure that you can support them. Another thing that you probably are considering is integrations. Where can a recognition and rewards program live? You know, part of that change management is it's always best if the tool is in the tools you're already using, right? I think we all know the term app fatigue. You know, so many apps out there, but if you can have the best in class living inside Microsoft Teams, for instance, then it just makes it so much easier to access, right? I think we all know if you don't have to use something, you don't know how to use something either, then you're not going to use it. You can't find it. You don't know how to use it. You're not required to use it. It's just not going to happen, right? So when that icon is right there in front, it's on that TV when you walk into the lobby, that's going to make people realize that it's important and it's going to be easier for them to access. So checking to make sure that whatever tools you work with can play together is always the best. And then, you know, nudges or notifications. This is really important as well, you know, especially for managers. Managers are the rubber that meets the road in your program. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, like, do managers know who they need to be recognizing with your recognition rewards program? You know, are they being reminded to do so? People need to be reminded until that habit is formed. You know, a lot of people, you know, especially managers, not every manager, you know, becomes a manager because they love to be a people manager, maybe because of just the way things go. They've risen in the organization. Maybe they didn't grow up understanding what positive reinforcement looks like. You know, that's where something like a recognition program that can help that person. You know, they say that AI can't teach empathy. Absolutely can. You know, it absolutely can, because now with generative AI, GPT, you know, you can put bullet points in and it can generate a fantastic recognition message and teach people how to give thanks and give appreciation. You know, again, another thing that you probably are thinking about is permissions and allowing certain people to do certain things. You know, how easy is that to do in the recognition program that you want to set up and utilize? Can you sync in job titles, countries, departments, and things like that automatically? You know, this is an important thing to ask, because down the line, you know, obviously you want to start small and grow, you know, initially allowing kind of a flat recognition program, but over time you may want to set up different parts of the organization to have different access. You know, your call center is very different from your engineering team or your nurses or whomever you have on your workforce. So making sure that everybody, you know, again, going back to inclusivity, that's something to consider in the future, and that will only be possible with you know, permission system or role system. Another thing that we need to cover is the idea of support. This is so critical. Again, going back to, if you don't know how to use something, you're not going to use it. You know, HR teams are inundated with so much. They can't be expected to continuously train everybody on all the different programs you're doing as people join the company. Sure, when you launch the program, you know, you can do that initial webinar on your own, that training session, but does your partner support you on that? You know, that's something that we consider a lot here at Recognize, having, you know, webinars weekly for managers, for employees, for admins that they can join so that they can learn more about Recognize as they come and go, right? So it's super important that that's available, number one. And another important thing to make is, you know, check out their product updates. How do they manage product updates? There's always going to be updates. If there's not, then that's a red flag. A yellow flag would be they're not really announcing the product updates in an organized way. You know, are they giving you fair warning on features that will be automatically enabled? You know, do they allow you to enable it instead, but then they notify you of that via maybe a community in Slack or Teams, via the newsletter or through the customer success manager that you're assigned? You know, knowing about the latest features is really, really important. You know, early on, we would hear, oh, you know, we just don't feel like this is a great fit for us anymore because it doesn't have X, Y, and Z. And we say, well, we have X, Y, and Z. So we've worked really hard to notify people of those latest features so that people can incorporate them and make your program better and better. You know, And continuously asking your employees yourself, survey your staff. What are things that you'd like to see differently in the recognition program? When we read the reviews online about our tool, it's a bit disheartening sometimes when I read reviews that from employees saying, "Oh, I wish there was more variety on the recognition values or badges. I wish I could give points because only my manager can." And these are things that our customers choose to configure, right? These are options. It's not us. It's actually the company's not enabling that. So, but they're missing that information because it's going to our reviews site, not your survey. So it's good to survey your staff on those things. And then also on the change management communication resources. Are there posters, email templates, Microsoft Teams messages, and so forth that you can utilize so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on the communication? So browsing their help desk, like actually getting in and viewing the help desk. What are the resources? How organized is it? Hey, maybe message support, maybe message their support system through that chat widget or email and see what it's like to get a response from them before you purchase. This is great to do with any program you work with, really. So starting to talk a little bit about things may or may not consider, right? So, what is the cost structure of the recognition program that you're going to be purchasing, right? Is it purely just a yearly subscription or monthly subscription? Is there an onboarding fee? Are there markup on the rewards? What is the price going to be like in 3 years? What does the contract say around price increases? Is there a cap on how much it can increase each year, right? These are things that you want to consider when purchasing a software. What is the absolute total cost going to be? Because sometimes there can be hidden fees depending on who you work with. Also, what's the cost of giving another vendor access to your data, right? We believe strongly that our customers' data is highly protected. If you come to our website, you're not going to start, or another vendor's website, you're not going to start seeing our ads online, right? We're not cross-selling information, things like that. That's something that we believe that all companies should believe in. But that's something to consider as we're on the price. Something else that you may or may not have considered is approval processes in the recognition program, right? We have a few different ways to do approvals around our incentives program, things like, hey, I've completed that security training and so forth. And then the manager, their direct report line manager approves it. We have approvals around, recognition as well. So what is it like? And is that important? Something to consider. What happens if somebody abuses the system? Can you make it so that all their recognitions can be by approval? We see large organizations, people with thousands or tens of thousands of employees that have a heavy frontline worker presence, oftentimes can have some issues around trying to gamify the system, right? Trying to one up the system. So we built systems around that, and we're continuing to look at that. But recognition is not necessarily a privilege. It's or a right rather. It's more of a privilege, and can't be abused, right? And there should be a process to maintain that. Something else to consider is the customization. There's, that's again where the devil's in the details. How can you really tailor the program to be what you want to achieve? And kind of maybe doing a little thought experiment. What would it like to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 2 years from now? What options would you like to see a little bit around that? So, that's why it's nice to maybe do a little bit of a homegrown program initially, get a sense of what it's like. Like in professions, it's always good to have, a manager or director be on the support line in the first month of employment. I know Zappos is famous for doing that. Facebook does something similar. As an engineer, you do bugs the first year at Facebook. So making people do the tasks that are challenging, and then how that works. So if you do a recognition program internally, you'll understand a bit more how it works. You'll have a bit more foresight of the things that you'd want to enable, and making sure that the program that you purchase ends up having those features. Things like requiring a certain number of words in the message. Things like having a manager's manager being notified, right? There's so many different options. Can you theme the mobile app? Can you theme the emails? Can you turn off certain things that you don't want? Don't be shy to reach out to whoever you work with. Their sales reps. Sales reps love to have meetings on their calendar, right? They want to talk to you. So if you reach out to them, they think it's a good sign, and they'll want to walk you through specifically, let's say, the settings. And so don't feel like you can't get on the phone with anyone that you're working with. Yeah, and there could be, these artificial limitations that you want to consider. How many admins can you have? How many badges can you have? Do points expire? Going back to a previous point. These are kind of these artificial limitations that, we shy away from, but there could be there, right? And so, those kinds of negative space questions, things that you may not consider, looking at things in the opposite perspective and bringing up those questions is always a good thing to do before you purchase, is making sure that there's not going to be any limitations down the line that you weren't aware of, like for instance, the admin count. Awesome. Yeah, ongoing training. I touched on this before. The admins especially need to have that ongoing training with the latest features. So, not only are there just webinars or trainings every week, right, for just how to use it, how to send a recognition, how to redeem a reward, how to go in your profile. Everybody should know how to do this. Managers, how do you see the latest recognition you sent? Who's the person you sent the least number of recognitions to? These are important questions that should be able to be answered in an ongoing, consistent webinar. But for the admins, especially, are you getting training on those latest features? Sure, you know that they're coming through that product update webpage or that notification you get of it, but do you actually know how to utilize those things? And that's something that you should ask to your vendors. Do you have a training? Can I come to those trainings? How frequently are they? Recognize we do a quarterly product update webinar where we go through the latest features, how to enable them, how to use them. And that's for all of our admins to be incorporated in. Does any vendor you work with do that? You want to make sure that you have those trainings. And that's critical. It's critical to success, especially with technology that, might be overwhelming a little bit, depending on, how familiar you are with it. So another big question is user management. A lot of people don't consider this. They don't realize that we want to have your employee population data in these third parties so that we can we can make the most out of them. How are we supposed to notify the manager of a recognition if we don't know who the manager is? Or how are we supposed to celebrate someone's anniversary or, their first month of service or their 6th year of service? How are we going to be able to notify those people of those things without having their data already in them? So that's through that connection to, Azure Active Directory with Microsoft, or a connection to Workday, or Paylocity is really popular now. Paycom is becoming more popular. So, ADP has been around forever. So how can we pull that data in? Does your vendor of choice, can they sync the data? Does that cost more money, right? How often is that sync? Is it every month, every week, every day, right? What happens when someone leaves a company? Are they disabled or are they deleted, right? What happens to their recognitions if they were to leave? What happens to their points when they leave, right? And these are all tied to user management. Can we actually pull in their hire date and birthday? For instance, with Azure Active Directory, that doesn't come usually out of box by default. We have to do just a one-time setup to be able to do a custom setup, connect Microsoft to the birthday hire date and pull that in automatically with Recognize. With our tool, we have set it up so that, Microsoft is just a couple of clicks because Microsoft makes it easy. But then we've also set up a system for, working with basically any vendor like Workday or ADP called FTP. It stands for File Transfer Protocol. It's been around as long as the internet, and it allows us to connect and pull in that hire date and birthday information. So that leads us to the next thing to consider, which is security. This is really important, right? If you're sending employee data over, is the birth date including the year? Are they ISO certified, ISO 27001, or are they SOC 2, or they have neither? You know, a lot of companies in the US have SOC 2. It's not international, so it allows for North America. But SOC 2 isn't really that secure, which is, you know, why we recommend working with vendors with ISO 27001. Another thing to ask is, have there been ever any security breaches? Have you ever had a hacking incident with your vendor? Security and IT approval should be one of the first things that you do when evaluating vendors. You know, yeah, and just making sure that they follow that. You know, we have a specific web page that covers all of our GDPR, ISO, and so forth certifications. You know, does your vendor have that kind of information? Do they also have a status page that talks about any incidences they have or any downtime they have? Do they notify you of those things? There's some really strong players in the space that we have not seen that. And that's something to double check on and make sure that they have these things in place, because this is the most important component with your vendors, is the security. The last thing you want to do is try to do something great for your company and then have a data leak or have an incident, right? And so you can alleviate those concerns, especially if they have that ISO certification and they have those continuous pen tests, as they call them, where, you know, white hat hackers come to the website, they test it, they make sure that it's secure, and these things should be documented by any vendor you work with. What about, this is something that comes up only when we talk to big companies. You know, we're surprised how little security is mentioned. It's becoming more and more a concern. But what is the disaster recovery plan? What happens if the site goes down? If they are all co-located in a single office, what happens if that office was to have an earthquake or to burn down, or, you know, heavens knows what's going to happen. You know, that's why it is a bit of a good approach to have that hybrid approach with vendors, where there are people in different locations so that there's never any necessary downtime. Where is your data stored? You know, is it in the United States? Is it with a strong partner like Amazon? These are things to ask. And when you ask them, especially as an HR manager, HR coordinator, you know, you're gonna put people on their toes, and they're gonna shape up if they realize that you know how to talk the talk, and they'll start taking you more seriously as well. So I mentioned this at the very beginning of the presentation, the idea of a non-monetary only program. This is not something that a lot of people consider. A lot of budget conscious universities or different organizations we work with that are budget conscious, nonprofits, they love the the non-monetary only strategy. But this is something that we recommend to everyone. You know, the last thing you want to do is launch with a lot of points and rewards and then have a CFO get upset about how much money is being spent, and then you pull back. You know, that's the worst thing. You know, people become used to these things. It's kind of like having the snacks in the lunchroom. If you remove it, people get very upset, more upset than is never having it. So, and we recommend, really kind of gradual step, ideally have like a year-long plan. And, this will build intrinsic motivation when you do this, because people will internalize the program for sending recognitions out of the goodness of their own heart. And then later on, you can surprise and delight them by saying, hey, now we have rewards. One of the things that we recommend is even, again, you say that there's going to be surprises along the way when you start the program. And the first month, you can utilize, Recognize or other vendors to pull the random recognition of that time period and give that person, the person who sent that and the person who received it, they could get a gift card or they could get a bonus. Hey, I want to highlight in the newsletter David Jones for being the top employee because he received a recognition, the random recognition of the month. Thank you. Right. And so let's say you have 1,000 employees, everybody could give, $5 a month in points, right? That would be $60,000 a year in rewards. Whereas if you give a handful of people a gift card each month for being the random recognitions of the winner, the price of the rewards component will drop exponentially. And then yes, later on, you can surprise and delight everyone with points and rewards now enabled. Quality control, right? And so, this is definitely changing now that we have generative AI with ChatGPT, but just being able to make sure that the recognitions have some kind of control. Can the admins delete recognitions? Can they be flagged? Can there be a limited number of words that can be entered to ensure someone just doesn't put like an emoji and sends it out, right? Can you be restricted how many times you can receive a recognition or send a recognition? We believe in throttling the recognition program, so less is more with recognition. Obviously, people who have high stress jobs, things like a call center, they appreciate recognition far more often than your knowledge worker, right, who may appreciate recognition once a month, right? And so there's a bit of consideration there, but we recommend, again, starting small and growing, and then you'll have a much easier time controlling the quality of the recognition program. We definitely have seen companies that launch with rewards right out the gate, and then the messages are a bit contrived because people are just trying to get points, right? So that's definitely something to consider. So the last thing I'll mention here is the last slide, and the resources I mentioned can be, you can email me. I can send you examples of managing your vendors, or if you have more questions or want to speak to me about anything, my email is on the screen. We'd love to talk to you. You can go to our website, schedule a call with us that way. But how are you going to get this approved? As an entrepreneur, as an evangelist, essentially you want to create that snowball effect. You want to have a number of people in the company saying, yes, I want this, right? It's very hard to do things on your own unless you are an executive, right? So, one, talk to the IT team. Do you approve this? It has the certifications. I've already checked. Rather than just saying, check out this vendor, tell me if it works. IT would much more appreciate if you said, hey, this is a vendor I'm looking at. Here's our security information. This is what they've told me so far. Do you have any questions I can ask them before introducing them to you? Sometimes we talk to people who they're just tasked. They're an HR director. They're tasked with finding the vendor. They're the first person they talk that talks to us. In a 15-minute call, an IT director can learn a lot from a vendor, and that can be banged out really quickly in a series of calls. But getting approval from them is really important. Having a number of people of different walks of life, different roles in your company, go into a demo with the vendor, getting a number of people with different roles saying, yes, this is going to be great for us. You're just going to get a lot more buy-in from the higher ups and from across the organization. And then you'll create a bunch of evangelists in the company as well, champions of the program, because they feel like they've been included and their decision matters. And one thing, another document that I'll mention that I'm more than happy to share if you email me, and you can create this yourself, but just having a spreadsheet where you can compare the different vendors in a spreadsheet. And this is obviously super valuable to a CHRO or an IT professional, whereas, do they have the features that we're looking for? Do they have the integrations that we need? What is the price? Is there a markup on rewards? Do they have the ISO certification? What kind of rewards do they offer? Am I notified of any kind of issues or downtime immediately? So more than happy to, share this with the group. And that completes my portion. Thank you so much for everyone joining. I see even more people joining now, so that's awesome. And I'll pass it over to David.
Hey everyone, I'm David here, an account executive at Recognize. I'm going to walk us through the Recognize platform with the focus on the levels of customization and depth of customization that can be applied to your specific program, to piggyback on Alex's focus on the fact that we can tailor a program for any company, any size. So first thing to note with Recognize is the fact that although we are looking at the website here, almost no users have to actually come to our website due to the fact that Recognize is fully embedded in the apps that most employees are already using. And specifically, we're looking at Microsoft Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, Slack as well. Let me give you a visual idea of what I mean. So this is Recognize in Teams. If you glance at the screen, you'll think we're still on the website, which is our goal. And so Recognize is always going to be one click away. Our goal is to really be inescapable during people's daily workflow. Don't have to remember another website. They're not reminded once a year that they even have a recognition program because they get their work anniversary email and have to figure out what their login is. Rather, they're here every day. So one click, we're looking at Recognize, and we can do anything they need to do. Now, just for the purpose of screen sharing, I'll go back to the website since we won't have the menu bar on the left, and I'll give you all a bit of a closer view. So what we're looking at here is first thing people will see whether they're on the mobile app, whether they're here, whether they're in an integration, and it's going to be a public view of all the recognitions that are going out throughout your organization. And there's 3 different types that you might have here. You might start with a couple, or you might start with all 3. 2 of those recognitions will be automated. And those are going to be work anniversaries and birthdays. The problem a lot of companies have with this is they're often referencing an Excel sheet, something of that nature, which requires manual daily reminders to look at whose work anniversary it is. And so somebody might slip through the cracks. Not a problem with us because these are going to go out automatically. And like with every recognition that you would have, you can choose if it's worth points or not. And of course, how many points. Now, the real core of the platform and where you can really start customizing it is going to be in the discretionary recognition badges you will create. That can be sent from peer-to-peer, or from manager to team member, or from director or leader or HR leaders to anyone else as you set it up. We have some examples here like our communication badge. So whenever someone wants to recognize someone else, they'll be able to do that via a customized recognition badge that you all have created. Now, while we have over 150 badges that you're more than welcome to use, a lot of our companies will eventually create their own badges more themed to their graphics and their colors. So you're welcome to do that too. This is going to be useful in general. You get to be one of the small percentage of companies where everyone knows off the top of their head what your values actually are, but also very much so for any new hires who right away very quickly will know what the values are by memory without even trying, because they'll see them here every day in Recognize. Now, with the badges, there's no limit to how many of these you can create. So you would have a permanent set related to values, key behaviors, but we'll also notify customers when things like Employee Appreciation Day come around. And you can create a special badge for that. We can create one for you, and you can send it a mass recognition to everyone. Happy holidays would be another common example of when that's done. So any specific events, you can recognize any number of folks or the whole company as you would need. And to go into a little bit on how you can further segment your users, on the left, we have what we call teams. So these are teams groups. People can be part of more than one team, and these can be groups of varying size. You could have divisions, regions, departments. It's going to allow someone to just click on that team and see the latest recognitions there. But also it's going to allow anyone to recognize an entire team as well. And on the reporting side, you're going to be able to see all the recognition activity, not just by individuals, but by all of these teams groups that you have here in the platform. Give you one example here. We have our Oakland accounting team. So this is going to be a news feed of recognitions for that team in the middle. All the members on the left, including the managers. And on the right, our RES, which stands for Recognition Engagement Score. How many people have received a recognition in the last month among this team, as well as what the most popular badges are. On the right, I'll be able to see any announcements that company admins have made. Of course, these can be things like work anniversaries, major award winners for quarterly and annual awards, but you can also use this as your internal communication tool to bring to attention anything that folks have to know about. And these can go up by email and even by text as well for those workforces that do have frontline staff. And when someone goes to send a recognition and they go to choose a badge, they're going to be able to see all the recognition badges that they can send. You'll see we have some points here, but again, we advocate a crawl, walk, run approach. And so you're more than welcome to start with no points and rewards. The positive momentum that's going to start occurring basically right away, given the fact that everyone can now publicly send recognitions with their managers getting notified, is going to be very present before we even discuss points and rewards. I'll be able to see a recognition badge's point value as I'm going to choose it. Once we do look at adding points and rewards, and that can be a second phase, where maybe you add custom company rewards like a day off, lunch with the team. Maybe a third phase can be gift cards. That's a pretty common way to set it up. But once we do add points and rewards, an effective approach is having a tiered recognition badge set. So you might have one set of recognition badges that everyone can send that are not worth points, and they'll just look like this with no point value. But then you could have another set exclusive to your managers, and then another set for directors and leaders. So those 3 levels of recognition, certainly effective. You can start with that when you add points and rewards. Having said that, our dynamic roles allow you to get more intricate as you go along, if you like, due to the fact that job titles, departments, countries can also be brought in as roles. And as such, we can permission any of these groups with specific recognition badges that only they can send. You'll notice here we have an approval on the right. So typically, we'll have that set of recognition badges that are peer-to-peer, non-monetary. However, if you do want to give everyone access to an above and beyond recognition badge, for example, that's worth a lot of points, and as such, you want to have an approval process, you can do that too. What happened here is the recipient's manager gets notification. Since they likely have most context as to what that recognition is about, they can review it and they can approve it. And only then would the recipient get that recognition with the points. That email is going to look like this. So I'll be able to see that message, see the context, and approve. And if the criteria for that recognition isn't met, that manager is able to send a message to the center to give them feedback on why. Now, of course, we can recognize individuals, but we can recognize any of our teams as well. So for instance, here I'd be sending a recognition to Joyce, also sending it to this Oakland IT team of 9 folks. And I'll enter my recognition message here. You'll see if I try to enter a good job, I can't send it quite yet. We do have measures in place to help ensure that your recognitions are meaningful, which is of course crucial. So for instance, I see here I have to add at least 10 words. Turning on this requirement is a best practice to make sure that there's some context to the recognition, to make sure that it is specific. And as you'll see on the right, we have tips. Even if they get to the first 2 words only, that's already very useful. It's hard to send a recognition that's meaningful if it's not specific. And we'll also have examples of recognition messages as well for those that need a little guidance, or you could even go the ChatGPT route for some ideas, as Alex mentioned. We can do different things here beyond that, like adding an emoji, image, a link. Of course, nothing compares to the popularity of the GIFs. So you'll always be able to add a GIF as well and go ahead and recognize. So this recognition is then going to be publicly visible on the news feeds. People can see that, they can comment, they can tag someone else if someone else was involved in the project. And the direct notifications would be going to the recipient and their manager. And if you like, we can go one step higher to where the manager's getting notified as well. Now, if we start without points, that email would look like this. It would just end after the recognition message. In another phase, once we have points and rewards, I'll be able to see how many points I have in that email, as well as some ideas on how I can redeem them based on whatever you all have in that catalog. Now, for stuff with frontline workers, we wouldn't just send email notifications when people are recognized. We'll also send text message notifications that say you've been recognized, and that will have a link right to their recognition on the mobile website. If anyone does have any questions, we'll try to have time for that at the end. Feel free to put them in the chat as well, which I've opened up here. Now, for rewards. Again, even when we do add rewards, we can have a couple different phases. First one can be internal rewards that are just easy to fulfill on your end, like a day off, for example. Once we look to do more on our end, we can add gift cards. We have gift cards available for most countries, pretty much anything you can imagine, from a Visa card to an Amazon card. But we also have a wide range of experiences via our gift cards too. Things like hot air balloon, car racing, Napa Valley wine tour experience, cruises, massages, spas, anything you can think of really would be available via a gift card, which is accessible to people right away. Let me give you an idea what I mean by that. So the gift cards, the convenience for users are pretty unbeatable. Pick what you like, you use it online right away. On the administrative side, customer success, we would just set up a load balance notification with you and we'll notify you when it's time to redeem. It's not something that you'll have to be coming in here and checking all the time. On the other hand, you can create any number of those internal rewards, and those would come with instructions and the specific rewards manager that would get notified and help that employee get those rewards. And these can be changed and added to as you go from one day to the next. Regarding the work anniversaries and birthdays, so users will have some options on the platform, specifically privacy related. Two of those being if they do rather have their birthdays and or work anniversaries be private, that's totally fine. They can mark that as such, and then it just won't show up on the newsfeed publicly for them if they rather those types of recognitions not be there. And what we've done so far is most of what our average employee would be doing. You know, we are focused on recognition and rewards. Takes a couple moments to recognize someone. Folks are either commenting on a recognition, maybe someone on their team, their direct reports, or they're recognizing. And if we have rewards, they're redeeming rewards. Another user experience that you would have in here would be the managers that we've been talking about. So they'll have their dashboard here with their direct reports. They're going to get notified anytime one of these folks gets a recognition. And that's going to look like this. So I'll be notified. In this case, David Martin has received a recognition, in which case, if that happened right now, I can always open my Outlook add-in, which is going to be another full functionality integration. That recognition will be right at the top. Could congratulate him in a few moments. And I can do anything else here. Maybe I send a recognition myself after that. Maybe I redeem some points for rewards and so on. Now, beyond the real-time notifications for managers, they're also going to get an end of the month email that shows their team for most to least receive recognitions. When we look at a team and we look at their activity level, if they're not very active, oftentimes the manager hasn't been very active yet. They're a big variable. So our goal with the managers is to make them have as much visibility as possible to what's going on in their team without having to do a bunch of manual work. And so they'll also have this end of month reports, as well as those regular nudges that were mentioned earlier that will prompt someone to come back into the platform and recognize one of their direct reports. This is an example of that. It's going to mention a specific team member. So this allows them to exert basically the least amount of effort possible. They don't even have to look through their whole team. What about Patrick? Now take a look at it. Has he done anything exceptional recently? You can go ahead and recognize him. Now, on the reporting side, we'll be able to see recognition activity by individuals and by any of the teams groups that we mentioned as well. So this is going to be our home dashboard at a very high level view. We'll be able to see types of recognitions, top badges that are going out, as well as what percentage of employees are actually using the platform. So we'll be able to see what percentage have received and sent a recognition monthly, quarterly, and yearly. We're able to achieve very high recognition, average engagement rates via our integrations, and then for frontline workforces via those text message notifications that would take them right to our mobile website, as well as being in the Teams mobile app and Habitaro mobile apps as well. Now, what a lot of companies will begin to use the analytics for is to issue some bigger awards. So for example, we could go to a quarterly view. We could give out awards to top 5 people who've received and sent the most recognitions. Definitely a good idea to give out awards for who sent the most so we can keep building that culture of recognition, that culture of appreciation internally. And for value-focused organizations, and particularly larger ones, it can also be very effective to look at the values and give out awards to who's received the most of each one of these badges. You could have a leader of the quarter, a leader of the year, for instance. Beyond that, we'll be able to filter by teams, going back to the use of these teams groups and give it awards just on that. So for example, if we have a region as a team, you could see who's received and sent the most recognitions there, or even for a specific office location, as well as by any of the roles that you have in here. So for individuals, that reporting would be comprehensive. Engagement will help us more so look at groups of folks, look at overall activity. For example, we can go to a Teams view, very quickly see, a quarter into the program. Well, are there any teams that aren't active that much? What's the activity for the manager of those teams? Make sure that it is inclusive and that everyone is participating in the program. And another great idea is to filter by manager. Again, when we look at a team's activity, big variable is how active has the manager been. And so we can look at manager activity and send out recognition awards based on who's been most active. And whenever we do any of these big awards, we can always then accompany it by an announcement that would post to the news feed and also go up by email and by text to highlight them even more. And just like human nature, the more of those people will see, the more they're going to want to jump in and participate in the platform. So going back to having a phased launch, oftentimes we'll start with the public recognition badges. A couple other things we can add here as you go. One of them would be a nominations process. And so this is going to allow you to collect nominations for monthly, quarterly, annual awards that you would want to run. These badges are totally customizable, just like the recognition badges. Difference is these are going to be private submissions. And so you can add criteria here, let people know what information they should be entering in the message, and they can do so. Once they nominate, these are private. Only the admins can see these. When we first create the nomination badge, we can use the announcements feature to alert everyone to its presence. And you can also send out another announcement when there's, let's say, 2 weeks left of voting. The insight you'll get from these are going to be a little different because people are going to be putting forth reasons why that person should receive a quarterly award, whereas your real-time recognitions are based on specific projects, specific moments. And so you can choose these winners based on the substance of the nomination messages rather than the volume. For example, in the admin view, you'll be able to see all the nominees, how many nominations they have, as well as the messages, and all that would be exportable for offline deliberation. You can send out a recognition badge to the winner when you're ready, as well as accompany it by an announcement that goes out to everyone. And then we can also support any specific initiatives that you want to promote internally via tasks. So recognitions are going to be after the fact. Someone's gone above and beyond. Someone's reflected XYZ value. The tasks get you to point people in specific directions before the fact, right? Maybe you have a community service initiative. You can promote that via a task. Whenever we create these, again, you can communicate that to all staff via email and text via an announcement. And then people can come in here and self-report that they've completed something of value. What happens here is that we'll once again have the recipient's manager approving. So the recipient's manager will get notified and they would approve that task. Now, if they do approve it, then they'll get however many points. Not the recipient's manager, the manager of whoever's submitting the task. Apologies. And so that person's going to get notified and they can approve this task since it's normally used for very specific things or things that people are supposed to be focusing on anyways. With the tasks, we stop short of the public congratulations, so that doesn't show up on the stream page, but you can be promoting certain learning and development goals or community service or anything else you like, safety initiatives via those tasks. A little more on frontline. Another thing that a lot of our companies are able to take advantage of for frontline workers and really for any workers is going to be our TV mode. This is going to be a great way to keep recognized, even more top of mind than it might otherwise be, is it'll cycle through all the current recognitions and this keeps updating. Okay, and I'm being told to wrap it up here, so I believe I will send it back to Hester.
I'd like to thank Alex and David, as well as all of you for joining us today. If you'd like to view this webcast again, the archived recording will be available on the HR.com website within 24 hours. The webcast credit will show on your HR.com account within 2 business days, and we'll also send you an email with your credit information. Your feedback is important to us. Please take a moment to fill out the exit survey that opened in a new browser page on your computer. This concludes our webcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.